Today we are looking at play scenarios involving technical fouls and National Federation of High School rules. Let's get started. Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Basketball Rules Expert, the show where we take a look at National Federation of High School basketball rules. We lift them off the printed page and breathe life into them. Simplify, clarify, amplify so that we can take them with us onto the basketball court where it's most important. Greetings again, everybody. My name is Greg Austin with abetterofficial.com. I've been a high school basketball official here in the San Francisco Bay Area for over a decade. I consider myself to be a basketball rules expert, and this show is all about helping you on a journey to a better understanding of the rules of National Federation of High School basketball rules and becoming a basketball rules expert as well. If you would, please allow me the opportunity to thank our fantastic show supporters, Jeet Gulati, Jose Lansang Jr., Brian Maki, Tyler Matlock, and Thomas Hennian. Much appreciated and much love. You want to support the show? There will always be a link in the show notes below. All right, tremendous. Thanks so much to our show supporters. This week we are looking at technical fouls in National Federation of High School basketball rules. There's some great news about technical fouls. One is the penalty for technical fouls in National Federation of High School is very simple. It's always 2 shots for the offended team and the ball at the division line opposite the table. Simple, straightforward. There are 5 categories of technical fouls. It is critical when we assess a technical foul that we know what kind of technical we have assessed. That is the critical component because it impacts the game in different ways. Some have similar impacts, right? But if we have a player technical foul and it's on the player, then it's never indirect on the head coach. If we have a bench technical foul on that same team member, then it is a indirect on the head coach. This, of course, can lead to changes in the game, causing coaches to lose their privilege to stand and coach their team. So we don't want to do any indirects erroneously. And if we need to have an indirect technical foul, we don't want to allow that coach the opportunity to enjoy that privilege of standing and coaching when they should not. So adjudicating plays properly is correct. And the absolute first step in that process is identifying what kind of technical foul we are assessing. We see it all the time. A play is presented to an official and they say that's a technical foul. And that's great. Yes, it will be one of the technical fouls that we can assess, but we must change our way of thinking so that we are always thinking what kind of technical foul is it, because that's going to affect various aspects of the adjudication and how we're going to penalize the play. So, number 1 is identifying which of the 5 and also being aware of what our window of opportunity is to assess the technical foul. It has to be within that period. If we are not within that period to assess the technical foul, our opportunity to assess has passed. So understanding what kind of technical foul, what our window of opportunity to assess is, and what the proper penalties and adjudication are critical components. Today we are looking at National Federation of High School basketball rules regarding technical fouls. Technical fouls, when they occur in the game, can sometimes, for some officials, be an emotional experience, something that they approach with trepidation. They don't want to assess a T, etc. These factors can come into play, but we need to be clear-headed about what kind of technical foul we are assessing, what the proper adjudication of the play is and how to proceed effectively. We want to do it by rule, and we want to do it in a game management fashion that allows the best opportunity for success for the game going forward. And we also want to be able to communicate our rulings with confidence. What we have on this play, coach, is we have this by rule, and then we're going to do this and this and this by rule. Having that confidence makes us better able to handle these situations. Our play scenarios today are built so that you can develop that confidence and take the rules with you onto the basketball court where it is most important. Okay, let's get started and take a look at our very first play scenario. A1 has the ball out of bounds for a throw-in. A1 completes the throw-in to A2 and then purposefully delays his return by taking 4 or 5 steps along the end line prior to coming inbounds behind a screen set by A3 and A4. A1 gets a pass from A2 and takes an unchallenged try for goal. The officials rule a player technical foul on A1. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Player's out of bounds releases a throw-in pass, uses the out of bounds area to move to the other side of the court, steps onto the court, receives a pass, uncontested, try for goal. Officials assess a player technical foul on the inbounder. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Yes, the officials were correct. It is a player technical foul to delay your return, deceitfully delay your return to the court, right? The player is taking advantage of the fact that they are in the out of bounds position. They make the inbounds pass. They have a responsibility to immediately re-enter the court after being legally out of bounds, which they were for the throw-in. If the player deceitfully delays their return and says, no, I'm waiting, I want the defense to lose track of me, and then I'm going to, make this move and re-enter the court at another spot, that player is at risk for a player technical foul. In this case, were our officials correct? Yes or no? Yes, they were. This is a player technical foul by rule. Now, what do we expect immediately? What do we expect to happen on this play? The coach is like, we're going to get pushback. It's like, I've run that play forever. I taught him to do that, etc. That's a legal play, etc. Right? This is a violation by rule. This is a player technical foul. Our officials were correct. Yay, our officials. We're 100% for the game. That was an easy peasy play to start. I wanted to get our crew in the game and comfortable. All right. Okay, let's take a look at our very next play scenario. At halftime, as the teams, coaches, and officials are making their way through the hallway to the dressing room, A23 makes an unsportsmanlike remark to one of the officials. The officials rule a player technical foul on A23. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Right? It was certainly a player who, or was it, who made the disparaging remark, right? We have to remember and understand player status in the game. Before the game, everybody's a team member, nobody's a player. We go out on the court, we're going to have a jump ball. The tossing official releases the ball. We have players in the game. The game has begun. These are 5 players from each team are players by rule. Ball becomes dead. They're still players by rule. Teams call a timeout. They are still players by rule. We get to the end of the first period, and we are now during an intermission. Intermission between periods. Intermission between the first and second period, the halftime intermission, and the intermission between the third and fourth periods. During that time, all team members are considered bench personnel by rule. So in this instance, where a team member makes a disparaging remark during an intermission, they are bench personnel by rule. This is a bench technical foul by rule. This would also lead to an indirect technical foul on the head coach. And if they had still had their privilege to stand and coach, they would no longer have their privilege to stand and coach by rule. So in this instance where the officials assessed a player technical foul, were the officials correct? No. No, they were not. And this really points to the fact that we must understand what kind of technical foul we are assessing. Is it administrative, team, substitute, player, or bench? Because that's going to lead to the proper adjudication of the play. Sometimes we have similarities and it wouldn't have made a difference, but in other instances it can make an extreme difference. So we have to know the difference between our technical fouls. Let's move on to our next play scenario. During the second period, Team A is granted a timeout. On their way to the bench, A5 makes a disparaging comment to the official. The officials rule a player technical foul on A5. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Right? So we just had the review. We understand that during intermissions, players are considered bench personnel by rule. During a timeout, players are considered players. So in this instance where the teams are moving to their bench during a timeout, this is a player technical foul by rule. If this was the end of the end of the first period and the player is making the same movement to the bench and makes the disparaging remark, then we would have something different. So understanding the status of players when they become bench personnel is obviously really critical for us adjudicating these plays properly. So in this instance where the officials after granting a timeout, when a player is moving to the bench area and receives a technical foul, they assess a player technical foul. Were our officials correct? Yes or no? Yes. Yes, they were. This is a player technical foul by rule. Only during intermissions are team members considered bench personnel. All right, let's take a look at our next. Team A is warned in the first half when A1 reaches through the inbound side of the boundary plane. Early in the fourth quarter, A1 does the exact same thing. The officials rule a player technical foul on A1 for delaying the game. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Right? So first half, A1 takes this action of breaking the plane. Later in the game, A1 does the same thing and violates the boundary plane. The officials assess a player technical foul on A1 because A1 has offended both times. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Important to understand delay of game warnings and the actions that lead to delay of game warnings. Delay of game warnings are delay of game warning to the team for violating one of the 5 provisions. It is a team warning for delay. a commission of one of the 5 things that leads to a team warning after a team warning has been given leads to a team technical foul. And this, of course, points out how if we get these plays wrong, we can be adversely affecting a player and is potentially having a very large impact on that player. If this player had already received a technical foul, and we assess a player technical here, they get disqualified by rule. They no longer can participate in the game and may have additional penalties depending on the league scenario of missing future games, etc. So it's a sort of a grievous mistake if we make this mistake. That's why, of course, it's important that we properly adjudicate plays and understand the basics and the building blocks here. So the building blocks on this are really an awareness of what delay of game warnings mean and what the penalty is for a subsequent violation of one of the 5 components of a delay of game warning after a delay of game warning has been issued in the game. So in this instance where the officials erroneously assessed a player technical foul, were the officials correct, yes or no? No, they were not. Right? It also brings up the opportunity to think about the fact that I may be a young official on a game working with a veteran partner. And we get to a situation like this, and the veteran partner wants to take an action that I know is incorrect, right? I'm sure that this should be a team technical foul and not a player technical foul, right? We need to, and we may have a partner who's more experienced, maybe they work other levels, and we're the young partner on the crew. What we have to do is say, look, I will bring NFHS rules knowledge into this game tonight, and I will protect the game from an NFHS rules point of view. I know my partner, may go a different direction because adjudicating technical foul scenarios can be different at different levels. But when I know or have a doubt that we are about to administer a play incorrectly or make the incorrect ruling on a play, I want to not leave that doubt unaddressed. I have to go to my partner and say, partner, I think we may be going down the wrong path. This is a team technical foul by rule. We need to have that courage and that willingness to get plays right as a crew. And if we have a little voice that's saying, wait a minute, this doesn't sound right, we have to respond to that and move forward and address it and say, partner, hold on just a second. For my benefit, right? We had a delay of game warning on the team, and now we have a subsequent violation. That's a team technical foul by rule. Notice what we're doing. I have stated a fact. I have made a declarative statement, right? This can help partners say, okay, wait a minute, you are right, and we're going to help us get plays correct. So just a caveat, something to be aware of as a young official. When these kind of situations occur in the game, and you know the rule, you may have been in the rules book a little more than your veteran partner, right, in recent years, you need to stand up for the game and make your voice heard about what you think is the correct ruling on the play. Federation of High School rules, which is different from other levels. At collegiate levels, some technical fouls do not count towards team technicals. And that's where we, as potentially a young official, can stand up for the game and say, no, I know the rule. All technical fouls count towards team fouls towards bonus. Also, I understand that indirect technical fouls are not technical fouls in that context and never count. An indirect is just a designation on a coach. Tremendous. Let's move on to another play scenario. During a timeout in the second quarter of play, the Team B coach requests the scorer to add a name to the team list in the scorebook. Team B has already received an administrative technical foul for failing to submit their roster prior to 10 minutes before the game. The officials rule an administrative technical foul on Team B. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Team B, earlier in the game, had received an administrative technical foul for failing to submit their roster prior to the 10-minute mark. That is an administrative technical foul by rule. Later in the game, they request the scorer make a change to the scorebook. So the information they provided, once they provided their roster, the information provided contained an error, and they have a player that we need to change the book for. In this instance, our officials rule an administrative technical foul on Team B. Were our officials correct, yes or no? Right? Because something that says administrative technical foul, all violations are covered for just the one assessment of a technical. But that's not quite correct. The rule itself contains 4 articles. The first article is must submit prior to the 10-minute mark. The second is that we cannot make, if we are forced to make a change to the scorebook, that the information provided was erroneous. It didn't include a player. The player has to change their number to match the book. Player need to change the book to match the player, etc. Article 2 is the one that there is one penalty assessed for multiple violations. If we have to change 3 players, 1 technical foul. If we have to change a player in the second period, and then we have to change another player in the third period and another in the fourth period, there was only the 1 technical foul. But that relates specifically to Article 2 of the rule. So in this instance, there would be a technical foul assessed for needing to change the book. So in this instance, were our officials correct? Yes or no? Yes. Yes, they were. So potentially confusing scenario, because what some officials are going to take with them is a basic boilerplate of administrative technical, 1 covers all, right? But what we need to know is actually there's a subtle distinction, and in this instance, our officials correctly assessed a second administrative technical foul on the play. All right, let's take a look at another technical foul play scenario. With 4 minutes remaining in the first period, substitute A35 reports to the table and at the next dead ball is beckoned in by the officials. After a minute of playing time has passed, A35 commits a foul. After the foul is reported, the scorer informs the official that A35 is not listed in the scorebook. The officials rule an administrative technical foul on Team A. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Now this is pretty simple, right? It's really straightforward. There aren't a lot of variables on the play. This is an administrative technical foul by rule to make a change to the scorebook if what we're changing is an accurate reflection of what the coach submitted, or the team rather, submitted as a roster and starters prior to the 10-minute mark before the game. Our only obligation here is to ensure that the information had been submitted, the transcription of the information that was submitted by that team is an accurate reflection of what they submitted. And a bookkeeping error in this instance, then we would not have a technical foul, right? So let's say that was the situation on this play. Coach submits their roster, the scorekeeper writes it all down, right? They're paying a lot of attention, but little dyslexia, 35, they entered into the scorebook as 53, right? Just a human error on the play. We get to this point of the game, the book says, hey, ref, that player's not in the book, right? We need to check and make sure that we have had that accurate transcription. If the team had submitted their roster and 35 was not, on the roster, they would be at risk of the technical foul. So in this instance where the officials assessed an administrative technical foul, were the officials correct? Yes. Yes, they were. If only all of our plays were that simple. Let's take a look at our next play scenario. The table notifies the official that A3 has committed her 5th foul of the game. The official notifies Team A coach that A3 is disqualified. As they leave the court, A3 makes an unsporting comment to the official. The officials rule a bench technical foul on A3 and an indirect technical foul on the coach of Team A. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Right? So again, we have a situation where we have a player and possibly becoming bench personnel and understanding what changes, what happens that causes that, right? As we know, with a disqualified player, when the coach is notified, coach, that player has 5, they are disqualified by rule or some variation of that. At that moment, that player has no longer a player and becomes bench personnel by rule. So in this instance, player commits the foul, the official reports the foul, the official informs the coach, making that player at that moment bench personnel by rule. The player then makes a disparaging remark and is assessed a technical foul. Their status at that point is bench personnel by rule. That is by rule an indirect technical foul as well on the head coach. If they still had it, they would no longer have the privilege to stand and coach their team. So in this instance, were the officials correct? Yes or no? Yes. Yes, they were. Hey, can I ask you a quick favor? If you're finding this video content valuable, take just a second. Hit the like button below. Really helps with the YouTube algorithm and helps to get the video in front of more basketball officials so that we can all get better together. Thank you. All right, let's move on to another technical foul scenario. A5 reports to the table as a substitute and sits on the floor. During play, there's a highly competitive loose ball situation between A12 and B55. After the whistle blows, substitute A5 steps onto the floor and yells at B55. The officials rule a substitute technical foul on A5. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Now we know there are special, sort of an exemption for substitutes, that are different, even though they are bench personnel by rule. When they go to the table and become a substitute, their behavior can be judged a little differently and not have a direct reflection on the head coach. But when a substitute technical foul refers to a player not being beckoned onto the court, entering the court, it does not prevent the player from committing an unsportsmanlike action. And that's what occurs on this play, is we have a substitute who's in that role of substitute, but has an unsportsmanlike action. And when that happens, the correct ruling on the play would be bench technical. This player is not allowed to, make disparaging remarks to the officials from that, being ready to substitute into the game, and they're not allowed to taunt an opponent, etc., all of these things. So in this instance where the officials ruled a substitute technical foul, were the officials correct? Yes or no? No. No, they were not. This is a bench technical foul by rule, and our head coach would receive an indirect technical as well. Okay, that was a pretty unique scenario. Let's take a look at our next play scenario. The third quarter ends. As the teams are heading to their respective benches, A1 verbally taunts B1. The officials rule a bench technical foul on A1 and an indirect technical foul on the head coach for Team A. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Okay, we're back to a much more common scenario, one that we've alluded to earlier in the show. Really straightforward, understanding the status of team members, what their status is, the intermission. The period ends. We are now in the intermission. Everybody's a bench personnel by rule. This could not be more straightforward. Were our officials correct? Yes or no? Yes. Yes, they were. This is a bench technical foul by rule and would be an indirect, as a result, an indirect on the head coach as well. Let's take a look now at another play scenario. After a foul is called against A1, as the official moves to the reporting area, Team A head coach demonstrably waves his arms in disagreement with the call. The officials assess a bench technical foul directly on the head coach for Team A. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Yes. Yes, they were. This is a technical foul. It is a direct technical foul on the head coach. Now, obviously, we have a ladder of possible ways to handle situations, right? This could be the first such offense by the head coach, but they are waving off the official. That is the word, whatever, right? We could, by rule, issue a warning to the head coach that behavior will not be accepted tonight, coach. A warning, put it in the book, etc. We are not required to issue a warning to a head coach prior to assessing a technical foul. If the action of the head coach rises to the level of technical foul, we may assess and should assess a technical foul without any previous warning. So in this instance where the officials assessed a direct technical foul to the head coach, were the officials correct? Yes or no? Yes. Yes, they were. That's on you, coach. All right, let's take a look at our next play scenario. During the game, the officials notice that Team A has a person on the bench using an iPad to keep stats for the game. The officials rule an administrative technical foul on Team A. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? So we know that administrative technical foul, Article 3, refers to a team not using some electronic devices for certain purposes, right? So we can get confused. The team is not allowed to use electronic devices to amplify a voice or for communication purposes or to review, let's say, video of the game. We watch an NBA game, right? And after a call, a controversial call where the team may challenge, obviously not available to us at the high school level, then the team, we see on the bench, the team is looking at an iPad to evaluate plays, etc. These things are prohibited by rule at the high school level. But electronic devices on the bench are clearly legal by rule for the purposes of tracking information. Legal by rule. It's important to understand that distinction. So even though in this instance a team had an electronic device that they were using for tracking statistics, The officials assessing an administrative technical foul would be the incorrect ruling. So were our officials correct on this play? No. No, they were not. Basic takeaway, electronic devices on the bench, legal by rule, using these devices to do very specific things, such as using a device to amplify a voice or for electronic communication, is not legal by rule, but really a small component of what's possible. Electronic devices are part of the game. All right, fantastic. Let's move to our next play scenario. A1 tries for a goal and B1 jumps and attempts to block the shot. In doing so, B1's hand strikes the backboard, causing it to move. The ball rolls off of the still moving basket. The officials rule a player technical foul on B1. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? We know that when a player slaps the backboard in an attempt to draw attention to themselves, this puts them at risk of a player technical foul. But we also have to know that when a player makes an attempt to block a shot, contacting the backboard is legal by rule, as long as the contacting of the backboard was part of that attempt to block the shot. In this instance, the play clearly defines the player as attempting to block the shot. So by rule, that is legal. And in this instance, where the officials assessed a player technical foul for slapping the backboard, were the officials correct? Yes or no? No. No, they were not. And obviously, since that contact was legal contact, causing potentially the basket or the backboard to move and the basket, maybe the ring itself, to be moving, the player, there is no possibility of basket interference or goaltending related to slapping the backboard on this play. Really important to know that and understand, of course, that this may be different at different levels, right? NCAA men may have something different, NBA may have something different, but at the high school level, if the original action was an attempt to block the shot, then the resulting movement by the backboard, the contact was legal, and so therefore the resulting movement of the backboard is not something that's directly related to the player or the team. All right, let's take a look at another play scenario. Thower-In A1 extends the ball through the plane of the boundary line. B2 slaps the ball out of the hands of A1, recovers, and scores. The officials rule a player technical foul on B2. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Player contacts the ball out of the thrower's hands, retrieves the ball, and scores. Right? We know that a player is not allowed to contact the ball when it's in the thrower's. But wait a minute. Key component here is the thrower has extended the ball through the boundary plane. It is illegal for a defender to violate the boundary plane by reaching through the boundary plane and contacting the basketball. That's the requirement for a player technical in this instance, and that would lead to a player technical if they reach across through the plane and contact the ball. But when the thrower, a very unique situation in basketball rules, and it's easy to get confused, but when the thrower extends the ball over the court, that is then fair game for the defender. They are legally allowed to contact the basketball in this instance. They would be illegally allowed to grab the basketball in this instance. We could have a held ball situation in this instance, right? All of these things, the defender would not be allowed to penetrate the boundary plane, but when the ball comes to them it is fair game. So in this instance, where the ball was extended through the boundary plane, the ball contacted by the defender, the officials assess a player technical foul. Were the officials correct? No. No, they were not. This was a legal play by rule, right? The other thing to think about here is, okay, same situation, defender contacts the thrower, right? We know that a defender is not allowed to penetrate the boundary plane and contact the thrower, a much more common scenario, right? The thrower, but a defender is never allowed to contact a thrower. So different play, obviously, but there's no distinction when it comes to contacting a thrower for reaching through the boundary plane and taking that action. It's just never allowed to contact the thrower. But in this instance, we have a dislodged ball, good play, legal. Confusion's going to reign on the court if something like this is a unique scenario happens in our game, but a legal play by rule. Let's move on now. Another technical foul play scenario. Here we go. Substitute A1 enters the court without reporting to the scorer. The infraction is discovered after the ball becomes live. The officials rule no penalty as the opportunity to assess has passed. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? All right, so we have a substitute who enters the court without reporting to the scorer. The ball becomes live, and then the officials recognize what has occurred. No penalty in this instance, right? Understanding substitution rules is critical, and understanding window of opportunity to assess technical fouls is critical. Some technical fouls have to be recognized within a certain period of time. The rules specify that a substitute who enters the game illegally, which would be the correct instance here, the player was not beckoned into the game, becomes a legal player when the ball becomes live. So if the infraction is discovered in this instance after the ball becomes live, our opportunity to correct has ended. So when the officials in this instance did not assess a technical foul because their opportunity to assess one had passed, were they correct? Yes. Yes, they were. I remember a play that occurred in one of my games, right? We have a two-shot foul. Two-person game. I report the foul. I'm trail. Look down at the bench. Player A6 is out of bounds. Player A5 is inbounds. They're both talking to the coach. There's obviously a substitution that is imminent, that we're expecting. Ball becomes live for the free throw. First one misses. Turn around to administer the substitution, but the players are switched. At some point, they had made the switch without being beckoned onto the court. But what also was a component in the equation is the ball became live. So in that instance, had no opportunity to assess. If I had definitive knowledge that the switch occurred after the attempt for the free throw had missed, right? But I did not have that information on the play. So understanding that we have a period of time to assess technical fouls is critical. When it comes to a substitute, it's really simple. Once the ball becomes live, any illegal substitutions, those players have become legal players by rule. Okay, we're getting to the end. How about another play scenario? Team A has the ball and the clock is running without the officials noticing. B6 enters the game and is Team B's sixth player on the court. At the next dead ball, B6 returns to the bench, after which Team A commits a violation. The scorer informs the officials that Team B had 6 players on the court. The officials rule a team technical foul on Team B. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Right? So we have a situation where Team B, or Team A rather, Team B has 6 players on the court participating. This is illegal by rule. But the ball becomes dead. The 6th player exits the court. The ball becomes live. A violation occurs. The scorer says, hey, ref, they had 6, right? Again, we have a window of opportunity. When can we assess a technical foul for a team having 6 players participating? If it is discovered while those 6 are participating. After the fact, our window of opportunity to assess a penalty has passed. So when the officials were notified, there were not 6 players participating. So in this instance, we do not have the ability to assess a team technical. Our opportunity has passed. So when the officials assessed a team technical on Team B, were the officials correct? No. No, they were not. Okay, we've had different play scenarios regarding technical fouls today on the show. Hey, if this is the video content that helps you as a basketball official, now would be a great time to do all of the things. Hit like, subscribe, and notify so you don't miss out on any of our content as we prepare for the upcoming basketball season. Right. Please allow me a moment to thank our fantastic show supporters, Jeet Gulati, Jose Lansang Jr., Brian Maki, Tyler Matlock, and Thomas Hennian. Much appreciated and much love. You want to support the show, you can always buy us a coffee. You know there's a link above, and you know there's a link in the show notes below. All right, additional video content. The Masterclass on technical fouls is here. 5 Play Friday episode is here. Check those out. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.